Life of Sakyamuni Buddha. 1. Life as a pampered princeling. Around 2,600 years ago, there was a small kingdom called Kapilavastu in the Himalaya mountains. One day, Queen Maya, the wife of its monarch Suddhodana, had a dream of a white elephant with 6 white tusks entering her right side and conceived a child. 10 months later, Prince Siddhartha, which means, he who achieves his aim, was born, under the branches of a tree of no sorrow in Lumbini. He was the future Buddha, the noblest saint who would save all sentient beings from suffering. It was said to be a full moon day, and Korean Buddhists celebrated his birthday on the 8th day of the 4th month in the lunar calendar. As soon as Siddhartha was born, he took 7 steps and declared, I alone am the honored one in the heavens and on earth. 3 realms are nothing but suffering, but I will save them all. The 7 steps Siddhartha took symbolize the great leap of achievement toward transcending the samsaric suffering from the endless cycle of rebirth. And his first words, I alone am the honored one in the heavens and on earth, were not uttered in egoistic arrogance, but a brave and confident declaration about the most fundamental human nature, that we are all dignified beings, already enlightened Buddhas. Overjoyed by the arrival of the crown prince, King Suddhodana invited seers and hermits from the forest to the palace. They observed the infant and all of them prophesied, saying, the crown prince has 2 possible future paths in front of him. He will either become a great king, who is a virtuous ruler of the world, or a great religious leader who would bring the radiant light of wisdom to this world. King Suddhodana's delight at hearing their prophecy, however, was short-lived as his wife soon died and Siddhartha was brought up by his maternal aunt Mahapajapati. King Suddhodana hoped to steer his beloved son in the direction of the throne. A bright and gifted child, Siddhartha started receiving at the early age of 6 or 7 the best education and training to prepare him to become great statesman as well as a general. One day, an agricultural festival was hosted in Kapilavastu. Despite the hustle and bustle of the crowd attending the festival, Prince Siddhartha sought out a quiet spot under a large tree and spontaneously entered a state of jhana, or a calm meditative absorption. Belatedly noticing Siddhartha was gone, people started searching for him until they found the missing prince sitting in deep meditation under a large tree. Lost to the world, awed at the miraculous sight of the shadow cast by the tree not moving at all, King Suddhodana bowed to his own son in reverence. 2. Facing the fundamental questions of life. Worried to see his son frequently fall into a deep contemplation, Prince Siddhartha's father arranged his marriage to Yasodhara, the intelligent, beautiful and proud princess of the neighboring kingdom Kolaya, thinking married life would settle his son's mind. Biographies vary as to when the marriage happened, but it is believed by many that he tied the knot with Yasodhara at the age of 19. As a prince, Siddhartha lived a sheltered life, raised with great care in the lap of luxury and blissful ignorance in the opulent palace. Perhaps he was mistaken that the world in general was full of carnal pleasures and youthful romps his father made available to him. But one day, a realization struck him after a quiet rumination. No one can escape the fate of getting old, getting sick and dying eventually. Yet, when we see that inevitable fate befall on others, we make a face and turn our back on them, or we pity them as if we would never be subject to the same fate. We do not realize it would someday be our own lot, without exception. How come? There is a legend that showcases Siddhartha's question more dramatically. The prince one day rode a chariot driven by his charioteer to the 4 outermost gates of the castle. At each gate in the east, south and west, he was exposed to the sight of the old, the sick and the dying respectively. To the prince, deeply disturbed by what he saw, The charioteer revealed the truth, so far hidden from the prince by his father that no one is free from the process of aging, being diseased and dying. Horrified by the prospect of what to come, the young prince went to the north gate as his last stop, where he encountered an ascetic who renounced the world and was devoting his life to spiritual practice. Seeing how free and happy the ascetic looked, unbound by mundane concerns and anxiety, a woman who happened to pass by mused aloud, "How admirable! His parents must be so happy to have such exceptionally accomplished son." The woman's words left a deep impression in Siddhartha's mind. His excursions to the four gates catalyzed his determination to renounce his worldly life and seek true, lasting happiness through spiritual enlightenment. The ultimate happiness, in the spiritual sense, is nirvana. The literal meaning of the term is blowing out of the fire, and the fire here means the flames of old age, sickness and death that keep blazing in people's mind and body and trapping all beings in endless cycle of suffering. Nirvana is the state where this fire is finally extinguished, leaving only the profound happiness and quietude behind. Siddhartha found immense comfort by envisioning such happiness that transcends all human suffering. Birth is foredoomed to death, after inescapable indignities of debilitations brought on by the old age and illnesses. Haunted by vague yet impending sense of annihilation, people would do anything to deny and bury the reality of old age and death in bigger and flashier pleasures. Yet, when finally faced with the cessation of existence, the inevitable conclusion of all that exists, we go down on our knees in defeat. When did this endless cycle of suffering begin? Siddhartha's trip to the four gates of the castle was his first step in his grand journey to discover the truth of self as well as the true nature of reality, in devoting his life to find the answer to the most fundamental conditions of human existence. 3. Renunciation. Siddhartha made up his mind to devote his life in seeking the spiritual truth. But King Suddhodana was desperate to stop his son from abandoning the life of a royal prince, and pledged to give him anything he wanted if he changed his mind. However, Prince Siddhartha answered, "If you can give me the eternal youth and the body will never suffer illness, I will stay in the palace." Alas, gifts such as immortality, everlasting youth, or the freedom from sickness is not something even the most powerful ruler of the world could grant. Shortly after the birth of his son Rahula, Siddhartha departed the palace in the middle of the night without saying goodbye to his family. The whole world was dead to the world, but Siddhartha drove his horse hard toward the gate of the castle. Despite thundering of the hoofs his horse made, no one woke up from the sleep. Some biography said the gods in heavens plunged the kingdom into a deep slumber, so that the prince could escape, because they ardently wished the birth of an awakened being who could teach the world the wisdom of how to liberate all beings from suffering. When Siddhartha reached the castle gate, its doors were closed. But the horse never stopped, just jumped right over the castle wall and brought him to the other side. Out of the palace finally, leaving his horse and attendant behind, Siddhartha journeyed on into the forest. He cut his hair and beard, and changed into the clothes he swapped with the hunter he came across. Now perfectly indistinguishable in his look from a wandering ascetic, he continued to travel in search of a spiritual teacher. He was 29 years of age when he abandoned his beloved wife Yasodhara and his only son Rala, and his biographers said it was the 8th of the second month in the lunar calendar, which is now celebrated as Buddha's renunciation day by the Buddhists all over the world. The world still praises Siddhartha's great courage in giving up all his material possessions and foregoing his royal position as an heir to a kingdom for a higher spiritual purpose, which is to save all beings by showing them how to be liberated from suffering. 4. Searching for teachers. Dominant religious tradition of Siddhartha's time in India was Brahmanism, which was an ancient form of Hinduism that worshipped Brahma as the creator of universe and all beings in it. It gave prominence to Brahmins, the priestly class of the society. According to Brahmanic belief, Brahmins were the only ones ordained by gods to officiate religious rituals and ceremonies to commune with gods, therefore granted the highest caste in the society. Meanwhile, the Shramana movement rose in the Indian subcontinent in defiance against the Vedic traditions. Shramana means one who toils or exerts themselves for higher religious purpose. Shramanists rejected the authority of the Vedas, the most sacred texts of Hinduism, renounced their secular identities, and lived the life of deprived beggar living on alms. Now, a wandering mendicant, Gautama headed toward Vaisali, where the most innovative religious theorists and philosophers of his time could be found. He met a great yogi, Alara Kalama, there who taught Gautama a form of meditation known as the jhanic state, or jhana. Later, he moved on to another teacher, Uddaka Ramapada in Rajagriha in the kingdom of Magadha. Once again, he achieved high levels of meditative consciousness. When he entered the state of jhana, all suffering melted away. But as soon as his mind returned to the state of ordinary consciousness, greed and ignorance still afflicted him. Both the teachers asked him to join them as an equal, take their place to teach their students together, but he declined their offer and moved on. Gautama now chose a path of extreme austerities. He has eaten very little and fasted until he could barely breathe. He severely punished his own flesh through harsh body mortifications and self-infliction of pain. He was so emaciated that people thought he was dead. The practitioners of asceticism in Gautama's time believes self-inflicted physical hardships would burn away the karmic substance that causes the constant reincarnation of human souls. So, the practice of self-mortifications was designed to enable the practitioners to break free from the endless cycle of life and death. However, after 6 years, he decided against the extreme self-denial, finding that it would only lead to the unnecessary torturing of the body without bringing any mental benefits. Once he realized harsh ascetic measures did not work, he turned his back against them without hesitation.